Now, if you like a Jaecoo J5 but you kind of want an electric vehicle, well, Amoda Jaecoo has the answer. This is the Jaecoo J5 EV launching very, very soon, and we have an exclusive first look at this new all-electric B-segment crossover. Now, the Jaecoo J5 in Malaysia is powered by a 1.5-litre turbocharged engine. In fact, we have one over there. But this instead uses an electric motor which produces 211 PS and 288 Newton meters of torque mounted over the front wheels. That is powered by a 58 kilowatt-hour LFP battery supplied by CATL, which gives this car an effective range of about 440-ish kilometers on a single charge. Talking about charging, this car will accept a DC charge rate of up to 130 kilowatts, which means that a 10 to 80% charge will take about 35-ish minutes. But notably, that is a higher DC peak charging rate compared to its competitors, such as the MG S5 EV, as well as the PROTON eMAS 7. And in fact, the BYD Atto 3, until you consider the EVO model. Now, the Jaecoo J5 EV retains this typical two-box shape that we've seen from the J5, which has made this car relatively popular. But for the electric car, there have been some minor revisions to the design, which you can spot from just this view. So, for example, we now get Jaecoo scripting very large, much larger than on the Turbo, hidden in perspex behind this little panel here, which I think does look quite good. As we move further down, obviously we have lost the waterfall grille. Instead, we now have a much more closed-off section here, replete with like little holes and little dents. I think this all just looks quite good. One thing that I would like to point out, however, is that these things here, while they look like slits in order to improve this car's aerodynamics, they do nothing. Just like the J5 Turbo. Moving down the side, as you can see, the minimalist design language, again first seen from the J5 Turbo, is now carried over faithfully into the J5 EV. The only difference here is, number one, on this fender, this is where you find the charge port, which, even though this car comes in at an estimated price of 125,000 ringgit, although we expect it to be much lower, it even comes with a powered door thingy thing here. That's a technical term. Now, in terms of rolling stock, this car also rides on 18-inch alloy wheels, just like the Turbo. However, the design of the alloy wheels are slightly different because obviously these are now optimized in order to reduce drag on the road. However, the tires on this car, this car runs on GT Comfort P10 tires. Now, I'm not sure if these are production spec because we've been told that this particular car is pre-production, which means that might change. I bring this up because the Turbo uses Chaoyang tires, which means it's very likely that we'll also get Chaoyang tires, or maybe Jaecoo will be nice and upgrade the tires. Now, as we move to the rear, as you can see, the design language is again very, very resemblant of the Turbo. So you still get this full width LED light bar looking thing. It looks like a light bar, but it's not because this is just painted black plastic with the Jaecoo badging on top. These are at least full LED units. As you can see, it's demonstrating them to you now. And of course, down here, the bumper has been reprofiled ever so slightly to look a little bit neater. Now, behind the tailgate, you will find a pretty decent amount of space. Again, what you've come to expect from a B-segment crossover, which means that in terms of overall space, you can fit about 4 people's worth of luggage, or 5 in a pinch. And underneath this boot floor, you will find a pretty good amount of space as well. Now, this is where you'd normally find a space-saver spare wheel, which we do not get in our market. However, what that means is you can also lower this boot floor quite easily at that, if I can get this to work. And then you've improved vertical space, which means now you can put cabin-sized luggages upright, should you so want to. The rear seats also fold 60-40, almost completely flat, which means that overall this is a pretty practical place to be. Other features include a couple of hooks on either side, rated for up to 2 kilograms worth of luggage. You get a 12-volt socket as well as a detachable light, which I find to be quite interesting. The interior of the Jaecoo J5 EV is also pretty familiar. We still get the same very flat dash design, which maximizes space. We still get a large central touchscreen here, which runs all of your major functions, including your wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. We still get a digital instrument cluster, as well as plenty of adjustment in the steering wheel, which means that it's quite easy to get into a comfortable driving position, which is always nice to see. Goes there. Now, beyond that, we also get powered front passenger seat, both front both sides, left and right rather, and you still get ventilation on both sides, which is very, very welcome on days like today. We also get a massive panoramic sunroof, a dimming rear view mirror, wireless charging pad here, USB-C, USB-A port, and a 12-volt socket. Couple of cup holders here, decently sized glove box, which opens with a nice soft effect, but it's not lined in felt. The door bins are large enough to fit a 1.5-litre size bottle without any issue whatsoever. Plus, you actually get physical controls for things like your wind mirrors, which is nice, as well as for the sunshade for the panoramic sunroof. All very good. And space is pretty good too. The front seats are in my driving position, about 170 centimeters. I have a good amount of knee room and a pretty decent amount of headroom at that. I've got decent under thigh support, a couple of crotch coolers, a single USB-A port. Material quality is the same as it is in the front, where it's hard up here but soft down here. You get a good view out, a karaoke system apparently, and this upholstery is supposedly pet friendly. Although I'm not about to go and steal a stray cat to prove that. So I'm sure that the question that's being asked now is, if there is already a Jaecoo J5 Turbo, why do I need an EV? Or why would I want an EV? Well, there are several reasons for that. Firstly, the Jaecoo J5 is already a pretty adept little town cruiser kind of thing with great visibility all the way around, and thanks to its very boxy proportions, it means that it's very easy for you to place on the road, which means that this car does work, again, very well as sort of like an urban runabout. And if you're going to be spending about most of your time, at least in town, stuck in traffic and doing that sort of thing, electric powertrain just makes sense. This car's WLTP rated range is well north of 400 kilometers, which means that you could probably get maybe a week's worth of commuting out and done pretty easily. And in fact, because this car is very easy to drive with good visibility all the way around, and because it's very easy to place on the road, it means that, for example, if you want to drive in the middle of town through traffic and so on, this car just feels like a doddle. All the controls feel very light, the powertrain feels very responsive, which means that this is just a good town car. And thanks to the acoustic glass that you get in this car, it also means that whenever bikes go roaring past, it doesn't really bother you in the cabin. Everything just feels nice and sorted and serene. And to be honest, when you hit the motorway, it's not like everything falls apart. This car feels pretty adept and pretty well suited for motorway stints as well. Thanks to, again, that excellent refinement. Plus, these GT tires do a pretty good job at keeping road noise to a relative minimum. It does mean that when you're just doing, 110, 120 kilometers an hour for a few hours at a time, life in here is pretty good. Plus, you have all those ADAS functions that I mentioned earlier, which means that you enjoy things like adaptive cruise control, lane departure warning, lane departure prevention, among many other things. All the stuff that you would want out of a car, regardless of whether or not you're just driving about in town or if you're trying to do motorway miles. Plus, if you want to do motorway miles in the J5 EV, because of its higher DC charging rate, it just means that you'll be stopping for less time every time you find an available charger. So it just feels pretty alright. This is a pretty sorted little package. And I do think that over the Turbo, the J5 EV, because it has more torque and more immediacy in terms of its powertrain response, it just feels like something that is just a little bit better suited. I think this car is best suited, in fact, as an electric vehicle rather than in its pure turbocharged guise. I understand that maybe the J5 Turbo would be more appealing to people who do long distances on a frequent basis, people who don't really want to think or worry about charging. That's a fair point. But for everybody else, if you're just going to be spending 90% of your time just hovering about in town, plus if you have the ability to charge at home, the J5 EV makes a lot of sense. And the fact that this car comes with ventilated seats, again, in our weather, really nice touch. The J5 EV, at the time of filming and at the time you're watching this, has not yet been launched, with estimated pricing stated at about 125,000 ringgit. However, if history has taught us any lessons, Amoda Jaecoo likes to put their estimated pricing significantly higher than what their actual retail pricing ends up being. And given the fact that vehicles like the iCar V23, when that came in, started at a little bit over 110,000 ringgit, I can't imagine that this would be significantly more expensive than that. In fact, I reckon that this should end up being a 109 to 120,000 ringgit car, which means that for the money, you're getting pretty decent kit. Now, of course, we've only been able to spend a few hours with this car because it's running on trade plates and we have an executive in the car with us, which means that we are limited somewhat in terms of how far we can go, what we can do, and of course what we can subject this car to, which is why I'm not going to talk to you about things like power efficiency and charging curves and stuff like that. Those are things that we're going to have to wait to do later when we have more time with this car in order to test it more thoroughly. But I think that from what is on display right now, as far as this sort of first preview, first look kind of thing is, the J5 EV is stacking up pretty well. This is a pretty decent car, and I'm looking forward to getting this car out on test after it's launched with actual launch prices to give you a slightly better idea of how this sits on the market. But compared to things like the BYD Atto 2, which I'm told is presently completely out of stock across the country, this might be a good, viable alternative. And so that concludes our media preview, first look, exclusive drive, whatever, of the 2026 Jaecoo J5 EV. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, hit the little bell icon to notify every time we make a new upload. Don't forget to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. All the links are in the description below, including the link to join our new WhatsApp channel. Thank you so much for watching. We'll catch you in the next one. Take care, stay safe, and jangan bodoh.